Good morning, everyone. It's my weekend finally, and I just wanted to share with you what my normal weekend routine is. During the work week, the average day is pretty simple. I go to work first thing in the morning, I work really long hours, and then I come home and fall asleep, and that's basically all I have time to do. Although I have had enough time to practice piano lately, so that's been really good, and I think that'll probably continue at least until summer. Anyways, I found out this week that I have really good news. I'm switching back to a 4-day work week. It's just a slow time of year, so there really isn't any reason for me to be putting in 1 day extra of overtime every week. Of course, this week, a lot of my coworkers were out sick, so I ended up picking up an extra day of overtime anyways, which I'm perfectly happy to do right now. That actually fits my budget beautifully. So that's cool, but pretty soon I'm back to having 3-day weekends every week, and that definitely means a lot more time for adventures. But anyways, usually on the weekends I sleep in a little bit. I usually wake up at 5 in the morning for work. And I'm not really a morning person in general, but I actually like being up before sunrise because that just gives me the entire day to do stuff. But on the weekends, I usually wait until the vans are out before I try to even do anything. I don't want to be getting in the way of people that are actually having to work. So I usually stick around the parking lot and sleep in a little bit late. With these 3-day weekends coming up, I'll often go somewhere after work, but with the short days right now and a lot of parks and everything being closed, I really can't go too far anyways. So this time of year, I'll spend the night in the parking lot after work and then head up to a campground in the morning. I wasn't really planning on having this extra day of work, so I really ran low on supplies. I of course have enough food, at least backup food for probably about a month. So if something happens, I get stuck somewhere, I can still be fed and watered at least. But most of that's more like canned food, stuff like that. But stuff that I eat every day, and my water supply tends to dwindle down a little bit. But this week I don't have as much fresh food, and my water supply is a little bit lower than I normally keep it. So it's good. I need to head up to the campground, and then along the way up to the campground I have a bunch of stops I'm going to have to make. I usually start up the engine and let it run for a few minutes while I take down all the window coverings and everything. As you can tell, it's a little bit warmer out, so it starts right up. It's about 50 degrees outside right now, and that's the way it has been all week. It's a little bit on the warmer end for winter, but it'll drop down. We'll have days in the 40s and 50s, stuff like that around here. It'll sometimes get below freezing at night, but it's usually not too cold, so this is really perfect weather for van life. Yeah, I need to get these windows uncovered so I can see where I'm going. I often store these covers for the windshield on my bed in the back. There really isn't a good place for them, so I'll just put them in the door for now. And then this window covering needs to come out. I have to open the door for that one. We're basically ready to go. It only takes a couple of minutes for me to stow everything and then hit the road. Sometimes there's stuff like dishes in the back that I have to clean up before I leave, but it wasn't really the case today, so I should be all set to go. One of the nice things is this week I managed to get my packages in, so I had ordered this camera mount, so this should be a lot better than the suction cup mount that I was using. So we'll see how that goes today, but it feels a lot more solid. It's not as shaky, and it's not going to fall off anytime soon. Another thing up front here that I ordered is a vehicle maintenance logbook. So I'm used to seeing these on a lot of boats, but I don't see them so much in cars these days. But I got this because I need to keep track a little bit better of my oil changes and stuff like that, and because I'm not likely to always be using the same mechanic, I have to actually, keep track of it myself. But it has other cool things on it, like this monthly checklist. I bought it in January, and I actually did check all these things at the beginning of January, so it's always good to make sure I have things like oil, washer fluid, coolant, stuff like that. Just, go through the usual checks. And so actually I really like that it has a checklist. And once you go in here a little bit further, it has an oil change log. But I don't know if I'm going to use the oil change log because it also has a maintenance and repair service log. And it just tells you, and you can use this to write down, the date, the mileage, what exactly happened and all that stuff. So I'm going to be filling that out here this weekend, and that way I know where I am on all the maintenance. I'm already starting to forget when I did things like the transmission fluid change, and I did have a lot of the receipts hanging around here. The receipts all got wet somehow, and so they ended up being kind of soggy, and so they're going to have to be thrown away. So I'll just write down everything that I need in that maintenance book. That way I can store that and know when I actually need to do all my fluid changes and all that stuff. And if there's any questions about what's been done with the bus, I can always show that to any mechanic that I take it to, so they know what's going on with it as well. The engine sounds like it's idling really smoothly. It always seems to run a little bit better if you just let it warm up for a couple of minutes, but idles really smoothed out. It still sounds like a cold engine, but it sounds like it'll probably be running smoothly once I start doing things like trying to merge onto the freeway. So yeah, always a good idea to warm up these old diesel engines. I think we're ready to go to the grocery store. Okay, so I just stopped by the store, picked up some groceries. It's just one of those weeks where I had to pick up a few more things than usual, but that happens about once a month. I try to keep my food budget under about $300 a month, and that seems to work pretty well most of the time. The only problem is sometimes with this early starts that we're doing at work right now, I do end up having to buy something like water or breakfast or something at work while I'm out doing deliveries. So that gets expensive really fast, so I try to make all of my own food to just keep my expenses down so I can get to my financial goals a lot faster. So I need to stop by Home Depot and pick up a couple of things for some projects that I'm working on this weekend, and then it'll be up to the campground. Well, looking at my fuel gauge, I realized that I needed to stop by and pick up some fuel. You do this about every other week, and with fuel prices the way they are right now, it costs me about $80 per fill up. I only drain the tank about to half full, partly just for lots of extra margin, since I don't know how accurate this fuel gauge is. But I also do it because these pumps, and especially the pumps at this particular station, tend to max out the amount you can spend on each fill up. So I just want to make sure that I'm not filling up too much fuel so I can actually, fill up my entire tank. Well, this gas station cut me off at $75, and I think that's what this one does, so I don't think it's completely full. Some of the gas stations you can just reset and go back and try to refill it again, and it works. Some gas stations you can't do that. So that's what happened this time. I tried to restart it basically and reset it, and it wouldn't pump any more fuel. So I'm stuck with what I have. It should be plenty for now. Alright, so off to Home Depot, and let's see if we can get a few parts so I can finish up some projects. So now I just need to run in and grab a couple of things, and I'll be right back with them. So I picked up this concrete paver thing, whatever it is, and the idea is I should be able to use this to prop up my bottle jack so I can actually lift the bus if I need to change a tire, and I might end up having to get a second one if I want this strategy to work, but we'll see. We'll try it. The other thing I bought was this Velcro here, so I should be able to hang things like my curtain and get those foam panels actually stuck onto my windows properly. So we'll see if this works. Alright, so the next thing I need to do is stop by an ATM and pick up some cash. Fortunately, there's one just down the street from here that I can use. And I tend to pay for my campgrounds in cash if I can, because reservations cost money, and this time of year most of the state parks don't accept reservations anyways. So it all works out. I can avoid all the fees and just drive right up, throw $20 at them, and we're good for the night. Alright, so cash is ready to go, and now I just need to head up to the campground. It's actually very early to check in. You can't check in until 2:30, and it's 11:30 right now. So I have a few hours to kill, so I'm going to take the scenic way up. It's not any longer, it's just nicer to look at and slower. So I'm going to do that. So I stopped here at Bayview State Park to eat lunch. It's along the way, and they actually do have a campground here. I stay here all the time, actually, about every 3 or 4 weeks. And it's a really nice park, but this is not where I'm camping tonight. I'm actually going to head further north, probably up to Larrabee. Well, my camera ran out of power there at that last scene. Apparently I should have it plugged in while I'm driving, and that way I can still have power. I'm pretty happy with the way that tripod mount for my dashboard worked. It seemed to perform really well. I didn't have any issues with the camera shaking around. I'll see when I go to edit this footage, of course, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to be a lot better than it was even with the old tripod mount, and definitely a lot better than it was when I was just holding my camera out the window. But anyways, I'm up here at the campground at Larrabee State Park. So the main reason why I use these paid campgrounds, well, in the winter there really aren't a lot of other options, but it's for free showers, or not really free, I suppose you're paying the campground fee, but they used to be coin-operated showers. Even last year, a lot of the campgrounds had coin-operated showers, and they started disappearing over the last year. They took out all the pay machines. So it's basically just a free shower now. Only downside is, of course, you have to reserve a spot and actually camp here to use the shower. And I think the reason why they did that was there were lots of people who were doing kind of like what I was. They were just going up to a state park, putting in the quarters and taking a shower and not actually staying there. And so it could have been a rule ahead of time, but it wasn't being enforced, that you actually had to reserve a campsite to use the shower. But since they took out all those coin machines, that's become a requirement, and they're enforcing it for sure. They're basically making sure that everyone that takes a shower has a campsite, and they're not just, driving up from wherever. Anyways, I've been at this campground since last night. It's actually the next day now. I really didn't get a lot done last night. I just basically took a shower and fell asleep. Really tired after last week's of work. I was pushing myself a little bit harder so I could get done early enough that I could practice piano. And then I ended up with this extra day that I wasn't really anticipating, and so, yeah, that extra day was tough. You pretty much have to kind of pace yourself, make sure you're not putting out too much energy when you're doing deliveries like that, or at the end of the week, you're just going to be dead. And that's basically what happened to me this week. But it's all good because I just got paid. I checked my account this morning, and I think it must have been all my Christmas bonuses were piled in with this account, because I ended up making a lot more than I expected and a lot more than I budgeted for, which I can't complain about. It could be that I got another raise too. This is the time of year where they tend to give out raises, but if they did, they haven't told me about it, and I haven't really looked into my pay stub to find out. Honestly, it's not worth it. It doesn't really matter too much. As long as I know more or less how much each paycheck's going to be, I don't really care. I was able to pay all my bills very easily, and so that's awesome. I filled up my emergency fund, so I now have a solid emergency fund for the trip. I asked for time off. I actually did that a couple of days ago, and I noticed the other cool thing is I used to have 2 weeks vacation, which I never used because I couldn't. And then when I went to ask for time off this time, I noticed I have an entire 3 weeks of vacation now. So that's pretty cool. I'll just use 1 week this time, and that'll leave me 2 more weeks of vacation for later on in the year whenever I want to use that. We'll see what happens. But that's pretty cool. I'm actually really excited about that. The other thing that I like to do when I'm up here is they have a lot of dumpsters and good places to take out trash, and that's actually really unusual in Washington. They took out most of the dumpsters at rest areas, although I just noticed the rest areas are open again, so that's good news, I guess, but they still don't have any trash there. You can't drop off trash at rest areas in Washington. But the campgrounds you can, and so that's another really, really good reason for me to use the campground, because it's basically between this. We do have some trash at work, and I do use that for some things. They just have all kinds of services here at the campgrounds, and it's just so much easier to resupply here, refill my water. It's just like a one-stop shop for all this stuff, and it's really the best place for me to do this. During the summer, I might only go to a campground like once a month, or I'll go to like one of the national forest campgrounds or something like that, some place that's a little bit further out there, but there's a lot more options for dealing with water and waste and everything. Well, I decided to take the long way back to work, and I noticed I was still way ahead of schedule, so what I do when that happens, I stop at a park somewhere and just hang out, do whatever I want for a few hours, and then I'll wait until sunset, and then head the rest of the way back to work. I don't generally like getting there before sunset because usually the vans are still coming in, and I don't want to get in the middle of their way. And besides, I don't really want to spend all my time hanging out at work. So it looks like it's sunset out there, more or less. And now that it's sunset, it's probably time to head back to my parking spot at work. Okay, so you can see here what I do in the evenings, especially at the end of my weekend. Usually I spend my weekend filming something, sometimes not. And so at the end of my weekends, I usually am transferring photos onto my iPad and then doing all the editing. As you can see, I had to buy a different adapter. So this is just a USB hub basically, so I can plug just about everything on the planet into this and it'll work fine. And so far it's been great. I've solved all my connectivity issues with that. And while that's running and while files are transferring onto my iPad for editing, then I come over here and practice piano. And for this video, I'm probably going to be using some of my piano recordings in the video, so I have a whole setup to do that as well. That should be really interesting to see how it goes this time. Well, my weekend's just about over. All the files are uploaded onto my iPad. I do the editing using LumaFusion, and that should be fun. So the only other things I have to do tonight, I just have to make supper, lunch for tomorrow, breakfast tomorrow, and do a little bit of practicing, and then I'm all set for my evening. So in case you're wondering what my days off are like when I'm working 50-hour weeks, that's what it is.